What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Hollywood Already Did It, a weekly podcast about movie reboots, sequels, adaptations, and other ideas that have been done before and are going to be done again because, as proven by a now Disney-dominated market, we're just going to keep doing this forever. This week, Disney beat its own record with The Lion King overcoming Frozen, which means nothing matters.
No. Because then Frozen 2 comes out this year, and they will beat themselves again.
It doesn't. Nothing is important. They are the top 10 at the box office, but we're not talking about Disney this week. Instead, we're going to talk about Universal and their 8th movie in a franchise. Their first, if you want to be really nitpicky about it.
The first, I think the 9th, because Fate of the Furious would be 8, because they made that alliteration to try to be cute.
Just start putting numbers over it. Just start either put numbers on it or put real subtitles on it. Stop trying to be clever.
Yeah.
In either case, we're talking about Fast and Furious Presents.
That's such a ridiculous title.
Hobbs and Shaw. This is now a thing. First of all, I'm your host, Blake Schultz, and with me is Terrence Tatum.
Hello, everyone.
This now presents a Star Wars story. A dragon tattoo story is becoming such an odd thing.
You would think
as if your globally popular, incredibly successful franchise that billions have seen are going to be like, wait a minute, Han Solo,
Hobbs and Shaw together.
But is that Star Wars as Han Solo, or is that a new?
That's got to be a different Hobbs and Shaw. They look exactly like the ones that were in Fast and the Furious, but there's no way that's connected. They're treating the population like they're idiots.
Right.
And it sucks, because originally this movie was titled just Hobbs and Shaw, and then somewhere down the production title, they were like, wait, guys, that's not going to work.
It also, and for some of it, it works. My favorite is still the girl who makes a bad film, was the dragon tattoo story. And I was like, in what world is like the girl who kicked the hornet's nest or the girl with the dragon tattoo such a giant brand
that we have
that
to
you
put
need
this
to
in
be
front
like,
of him.
it's a new chapter in the tattoo saga.
Elizabeth Salander means nothing to no one.
There's been one American film,
right,
and the other ones are decades old.
Yeah,
but let me tell you, it's great.
It's a new story.
But in either case, Fast and Furious has presented to us a movie.
Yeah. That just sounds ridiculous, but they have.
It's so dumb. Remember when this franchise was like, who's stealing these DVDs?
It's funny, this movie began as a Point Break ripoff. Like, that's what you think about. This franchise started as a Point Break ripoff.
Yeah, now it's become an every sci-fi trope you can imagine ripoff.
Yeah, it's now like a Bond traveling around the world, space. It's bananas. And it started with Fast Five. That's when things started to turn. They're like, this car stuff is fun, but how about us becoming international spies?
Yeah, no, at some point, Justin Lin was like, what if?
Hear me out.
Stay with me. This world didn't matter.
Right. Physics are no longer a thing. I'm going to tie 2 chains to this bank safe and ride it through Rio. You with me? Cool.
I mean, I think that's part of why these keep working. There's always some like giant set piece that I am, even as dumb and ridiculous as they are,
that
enjoy
I
watching.
Can't stop smiling from ear to ear.
It's just silliness.
Yeah, it is.
It's kind of replaced like the B movie.
It reminds me of like watching a Saturday morning cartoon just in real life, like with real life people. Like there's a moment in Hobbs and Shaw which I loved. I couldn't stop. And in the commercial, I thought it was ridiculous, but because of how it went through the entire scene, I'm like, all right, fine. Is when Hobbs and Shaw is taking the elevator and Hobbs is just jumping out the window and just like straight up falling down the skyline without a parachute. And he starts attacking people. I was like, this is ridiculous, but I am in all of this. And I was like, it's one of those when the brain checks out and you're like, cool, let's do it.
Yeah, no, this is one of those movies that I continuously am very happy that weed is legal for. In most of the country. Yes. And in the parts where it's not, you're doing it anyways.
Correct.
So what did you think of this movie?
I really, really enjoyed this movie.
Because you're a huge fan.
I'm a massive fan. Like every time a new one comes out, I go back down the wormhole.
Franchise.
Oh yeah, it's in my top 10. There's only one of these films that I don't like, and it's not Tokyo Drift. It's Fast 4.
Too Furious.
Fast 4 I just don't really like. Too Fast and Furious is fine. I don't like Roman, but it's John Singleton, so I don't crap on that movie as much as I probably should. I give it a pass. The Fast and the Furious 4 for me was just utterly boring. But it ended on that cliffhanger with like them trying to free Brian from the train. I was like, oh, we're going somewhere, and then I was like 5, I was in. So I watch these all the time, and I'm a big fan. This movie, I enjoyed. I did dig that it kind of stopped being car. I mean, there's a car sequence or car chase in here, but it's not really about that. It's more like hand-to-hand fighting and like some sci-fi, like,
no, this is a sci-fi movie.
Yeah.
This is a full-on, like, this is the Moonraker for Bond movies.
Correct. And I'm trying to think that if I did not have the cachet of these characters before, would they be able to jump off so high right here? Like, come batshit crazy with this one? I think because I had that, I'm like, all right, fine, I'm willing to go into whatever world you put me in. And so I left the theater smiling like, yeah, I'd do this round again. And what's crazy about me for this one is I actually like all the characters that are in Hobbs and Shaw. So if we do this again, even with, we'll go into spoilers a little bit later, but even with whatever they add on, I'm more inclined to see their entire world than whatever we have left.
You don't want to watch Michelle Rodriguez figure out her memory.
Yeah, no, I'm done.
Vin Diesel's, whose name I do not remember. Dominic Toretto.
I know that one well, Dominic, because we are family.
Yeah, there's a handful of characters now where I'm like, what was Chris Pratt's name in Jurassic World? What are these bland?
Don't know his name. I know it's Oliver or Oscar. It's an O, but I don't know what it is. Owen, maybe?
Owen sounds right. But it's the same thing in this. I'm like, it's just Vin Diesel and Michelle Rodriguez.
It is.
I don't want fucking Dominic
and when I
Toretto.
look at the cast, and if you take The Rock and Jason Statham off of the Fast cast, when I look at the rest of that Fast cast, I was like, I don't really care about these.
Well, we keep kind of repeating ourselves with those stories.
Right.
They keep being about family. They're just getting bigger and bigger. We
Yeah.
keep forgiving the villain. I'm sure in the next one, Charlize Theron will be on their side.
With her braids.
He'll have another surprise baby that we'll have to save.
Yeah.
And somehow she'll be inducted into the family. And we'll just do this forever.
Yeah.
And every now and then Wiz Khalifa will make a song that'll make us very sad.
Everyone would cry.
Even though if you didn't know that Paul Walker passed away.
It's still a sad song.
It's still a sad song. That moment wouldn't make any sense.
No.
He's playing with his kid on the beach, and Vin Diesel, without the context of Paul Walker in real life, is just like, well, I think we should abandon him here forever.
You'd be like, but why?
They don't leave him a car to get back with.
He's fine. And then what's weird is his sister, apparently in the next film, Jordana Brewster is back as a main character again. So you're like, well, none of this matters.
They don't care. Yeah, this was a weird movie because I really wish I hated it because it's so...
It's nuts.
Not only is it, like, dumb and ridiculous,
Yeah.
it's just so, like, tropey. Like, every sci-fi trope they kind of throw in there. And it's just the virus is going to kill everybody,
Right.
and we've made the super soldier, and, if we don't get it out of her, it's going
And then
to kill everybody.
she takes this serum and puts it in herself and reacts as the host of it.
Emperor Palpatine behind the scenes voice whose plan is to just
definitely feels like a Saturday morning
make
cartoon.
a better world. Like we've seen these kind of beats so often that I think without it being a Fast and the Furious movie, we would be like, what a generic movie, which kind of sucks because when you talk about originality and you want these original properties, at first I go, well, you could have just taken the Fast brand off, put in these 3 colossal stars with Idris Elba, and made an original sci-fi movie.
Right.
But how original would that have really been?
Right. It would have still been a bunch of ideas from other movies stolen. So it's like, well, we'll steal it, but we'll put the Fast brand on it to kind of give it a new sheen. And I will say this. I think while, yes, everything is stolen, it feels like nothing's really new, where I have a lot of fun with it. And I think that's what separates these two, is that both The Rock and Statham are bona fide stars. Like, there's so much charisma off the two of them too that they do sometimes just like literally read the phone book to each other, and you're like, well, that's great.
Yeah, I like them enough, and the action is good enough.
It is good enough
that you can kind of watch it, and there are even things they do in it that I like.
Yeah.
I really do like Jason Statham's story, and his sister's story, and this idea of
Vanessa Kirby is great in this too as well.
This like shadow organization that inducts you, but they also control the media. So if you go against them, they just make you out to be a villain.
Right.
I really wish we had gone deeper into that. Especially when we turn it on Hobbs, since he's been around and has been like a good whatever part of the government he's in. Good soldier with air quotes.
He's essentially like a finder. He finds like a bounty hunter essentially.
Yeah. So, when they start kind of twisting that knife, I almost wanted to see more of that world and like the consequences of if this corporation really wins.
Well, I think it's weird too because, like you said, the story with Jason Statham, and then you have. I think that's what helps. Is this movie has heart too. It's a weird thing. Like, you like to say that the original series does too, but it becomes repetitive. With this one, it's The Rock's like, I haven't gone home in like years, and that's a cool thing to be like. Yeah, I've had this daughter who has not seen her grandmother, and I haven't seen her uncle in ages. And it's like that's the way you kind of bridge that all back together. So while it does have some of those ridiculous things, it does on the other side try to like ground some of that a little bit of like, well, there's a heartbeat behind all of this crazy shenanigans that we're doing.
And that's really always what this franchise has kind of done well.
Yeah.
Is they keep at least giving you some relatability to these characters, even if it's as simple as like, well, they're in like the Barrow. And
Yeah.
everyone relates to this, and even though we shouldn't, because The Rock moves a missile with his hand.
With his hand on ice.
But that's, I have the right kind of brain damage to just be like, that's fun.
Yeah, I'm like, cool.
All of these movies feel like playing a video game with God mode on. It's like
Yeah.
you're playing through Resident Evil 4 when you've unlocked the gun that destroys everything in one hit. And I'm like, okay, whatever. I've unlocked enough nonsense in video games where I've been like, I'm going to play through this dressed as like an old 20s gangster
I
now.
definitely did that with...
Have God powers.
Yeah, I definitely did that with Resident Evil 5. I went back through with my brother, who I went through once, played again with him, and I had like a rocket launcher. I was set. I was like, so I'm just blowing shit up with one shot.
Yeah, I think that's part of why I can accept these movies is I've done enough dumb nonsense to myself to be like, sure,
that's fine.
They turned on the cheat codes before they played. This world is kind of what I want to talk about next, though. I feel like this movie, I saw an article that it posited they were so happy that it pushed Fast and the Furious into sci-fi. Mm-hmm. We finally did it.
Because they've been trying to get the main series to like space, and I'm like, all right.
I think that's the joke we all make because of how crazy these movies are and the inevitability of it going to space. I don't know that we actually want that. Like,
I don't either. Although I feel like this movie makes that more of a possibility than the original series, just because how sci-fi and otherworldly. Like, there's this crazy organization in the background. Like, I feel like we could end up in space faster.
Oh, these two at least will. I don't know that we'll send Dominic Toretto and Michelle Rodriguez up there. They're going to keep racing cars and doing whatever. But it posits such a weird landscape now of this tech exists. So shouldn't, in theory, our government be working on something similar, and the Chinese government and the Russian government?
Yeah.
And if these tools are out there, and this weird bike that acts like Thor's hammer.
One of the greatest things ever. I was like, this is so nuts, but I'm in it.
Like a puppy dog that zooms over to him. We're going to keep doing that. What does the next Fast and Furious movie look like?
They have kind of put the original series behind an 8-ball because you're like, well, we're on to this.
Well, do you make those smaller now?
I think you almost have to.
Back?
Yeah, you almost have to make those more of your street-based ones, whereas the Hobbs and Shaw is just going batshit crazy, and bigger. I think that series is just going to go bigger because you have two stars that are actually bona fide stars. Like, this movie hasn't opened in China yet, but when it does, I feel like that number is going to be huge.
Absolutely will.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting that The Rock's become the guy that you'll go to the movie for, and Vin Diesel kind of hasn't put anything out besides
the Fast.
movies.
Like, he's tried going back to Pitch Black a couple of times. It hasn't worked.
He's Groot.
He is Groot.
I don't know that that's why people go to those movies.
Yeah, I feel like anyone else could probably get into a booth and say I'm Groot, and they'd still be there. I think Vin Diesel thinks he's a bigger draw than he is, but he only draws in these films. I don't think anything outside of that he's ever really pulled in. Where Rock is the bona fide star, and Statham is too. I mean, The Meg should not have made the money that it made last year.
I disagree. The Meg was an excellent film that deserved a lot of money. But see, that's also a ridiculous, over-the-top, stupid movie.
But that's Statham's entire career. Like, Crank, I love the Crank movies. I love those movies.
Oh, Crank 2.
Crank 2 is nuts.
We'll get a Crank 3. It'll come. I forgot about those movies.
Yeah.
Because, they're ridiculous.
Crank and Transporter, you're like, Statham's been doing this his entire life, and I love it.
Yeah, no, they've been making ridiculous nonsense. Both of these actors forever. This isn't a new thing.
So when you put them together, you're like, yeah, of course, this is what we have. This naturally makes sense.
Yeah. No, I'm okay with that. So this pushed Fast and the Furious into sci-fi. And I feel like when you look at other spin-offs, kind of for like the point of our show, how do you really navigate that? Because there's a history of spin-offs either audience-wise not really resonating to it or box office-wise kind of dropping it down. You look at, both of the Star Wars spin-off movies. You can even go as far as like some of the MCU movies don't do as well after something like Endgame and Avengers.
Yeah, it's so funny too because I actually heard someone say that they only go to the Avengers movies. They don't see the solo stories. And I'm like, wow, I didn't realize that's an actual thing. I think Star Wars is probably the best current litmus test of what works in the main story and what doesn't. Rogue One did well, but
it was still back. Star Wars was still
right.
back.
Yeah, it was still at the top. And I think what hurts Star Wars is that Last Jedi wasn't well received, and then Solo came right after it. I think because the Fast and the Furious series has still been steadily well received for the most part, that I think if Fate of the Furious bombed and then they tried to come out with Hobbs and Shaw, I think that would have been a bigger test for Hobbs and Shaw.
Right.
It helps that series was working. Then you take the rock off of it, and you're like, oh, cool, we're going to do our own thing, and it still works.
Yeah, that's true. I think, you kind of have to sort of do what this movie did and be unique enough. You look at even the Lego movies that then made a Batman film,
right.
and it wasn't just another Lego movie. It really stood on its own by kind of using unique themes and new ideas. And I think sometimes with a spin-off, the studio's looking less at what the audience wants and more at the box office revenue, which is why you get something like Solo, where I think a lot of Star Wars fans, casual Star Wars fans, were like, we know that character already.
Yeah, we know that character. These beats that you're telling me in this, we've already kind of talked about. I didn't need to visually see it.
Yeah. Or then you even look at something like the Annabelle movies that have spun off of The Conjuring.
That's a good point, yeah.
And those have, at least changed the story a bit.
Correct.
From each movie.
Right.
Or The Nun. Like, The Conjuring's really done a lot of those kind of spin-offs. They've done the most of the spin-offs, yeah. We don't get a lot anymore. I feel like it was more of a TV thing back in the day.
TV used to do it a lot. Of like you would get a spin-off series from like All in the Family and the Jeffersons went hand in hand, and what you call it, the Fonz actually had his own spin-off.
Yeah,
like that happened.
Joey.
Yeah, it's like that happened a lot on TV because they're not quite ready to let that character go.
Well, and a lot of the spin-offs too, I think, at least back in the day for movies, were straight to DVD.
Correct.
Like all these Ace Venturas, all these. There was one. It was Pet Detective.
Yeah.
But the American Pie movies.
Right.
But I mean, you even look at something like Harry Potter. We spun off into Fantastic Beasts.
Yeah, and I'm not a big fan of that series.
And it just doesn't connect the same way. So I'm wondering, are there just some universes where it is more about the character than it is about the world? Are we more interested in Iron Man than we are just in the MCU? Are we more interested in Luke or Rey or Vader than we are at every corner of the galaxy?
Yeah, I definitely feel like Skywalker. I definitely feel like Star Wars is a series that if it's not Skywalker related, a lot of the audience checks out. And I don't know why, because I'm one of the few that want to do something outside of Skywalker relation. But I'm in the minority. I feel like people do still want to have some type of connection tissue, and I think that's why the Annabelles work more so than the Nuns do, because the Annabelle actually kind of ties back into, especially this last one had Vera Farmiga and Pat Wilson in it. So it's one of those ones where I think they do still, like, while you're a spinoff, they still want to have some type of connection. And for this one, luckily enough, they had a spinoff where, unlike with Rogue One or with a new Solo where you're kind of recasting or doing something else, this spinoff actually has the two actors that were in the original series, and that helps a lot.
Well, then why didn't Bumblebee connect?
I think that is a franchise that had burned their audience so much. Like Transformers 4 and Transformers Last Night were not well received at all. So by the time you got to Bumblebee, which I adore Bumblebee, I think Bumblebee is great, but I don't think you had a robot star coming in, you didn't have an actor that people connected to. So Bumblebee is, you're correct, Bumblebee should have worked, but because John Cena and Haley Steinfeld, they're not big names, or they weren't in any of the previous ones, bringing them over doesn't really have that same residue.
And even all of those, I think, too, that we've mentioned are prequels. Mm-hmm. Fantastic Beasts, Solo, Bumblebee.
Yeah.
All of those are kind of like going backwards, and I just think that's a harder sell.
It's hard for me. Like, it's hard for me to wrap my brain around prequels. That was one of the main reasons why Solo just absolutely didn't work for me. And I think you do that even with, even though you're going to a different area, like not the same school, for Harry Potter and then for Fantastic Beasts, it's still like I know where this is going. I know what happens to Dumbledore. Like I don't really need to go through 5 or 6 movies to get to this point.
Right. I think that's the other thing is you're promising me this very long road where
Right.
Hobbs and Shaw is just
Here we are.
this is the next beat for these characters. It's a lot more the way comic books do it, where they have a big event and then go, well, if you want to follow Cyclops, he has
He's
his
going over
series,
here.
and Cap's over here,
Yeah.
and Black Panther's over here, and we're not going to go back in time.
Right.
Like, it's fine, but...
Yeah.
I mean, even things like, which I guess kind of started The Rock's career was the Scorpion King.
Yeah, and he did that, and then that went off and did a bunch of direct-to-video.
3 movies, yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny because I think the ones that are successful also have the same commonality that Hobbs and Shaw have, where they are in a different genre. It is a different take. You even look at Logan next to the X-Men movies, or Deadpool next to the X-Men movies, and it was a prequel and a far sequel, but it also was a breath
take and
where
a new look. Yeah.
Rogue One and Solo were just more Star Wars.
Right.
One's a war movie, one's a heist movie,
yeah,
and
but-
however you want to spin it. But it
Right.
felt, the DNA of it felt the
Still
same.
this is
Where
similar.
like Logan and Deadpool feel like such
very
unique
different.
entries in their series, and I
Right.
think Hobbs and Shaw. To your point, there aren't a lot of cars.
No.
There really isn't this overlapping theme of family.
No.
It's a very weird sci-fi movie that ends up being like tech versus nature
yeah.
in a weird way at the end. And like guns are bad. And
Yeah. Like
have to
mom
kind of-
takes away the guns. It's great. I love the final battle. In this
I really
movie
thought
with
I was going to
Idris.
hate getting to Samoa with the spears in the trailer. I was like, oh, really? This whole third act is going to be like, we're going to fight the super soldiers with nothing. But then it was a lot more. I hate comparing these movies because I shouldn't. It felt a lot more like the first Superman movie, where instead of just punching Lex, he has to outthink it.
Right, had to outsmart them. So
And
they
it was let's turn
turn
off
their
the
guns for
They
like we have
to
like
be
a
unlocked.
8 minute window where we can kind of knock them down as much
Yeah.
as we can. Like I like that. That was
Then you trap them in the
Right.
circle. We figured out kind of,
Yeah.
Idris Elba's going to see everything coming, so we have to get him from the back. Even that felt like a cool video game co-op
did.
boss
It
to me.
did.
Of like,
the two of them.
we have to
I
solve this
love that.
puzzle.
And the way that was shot in the rain and then showing his eyes, seeing all of a sudden losing, and the two of them looking at each other saying, all right, now we got to work together. All of that worked so well for me. I was like, oh, this is great.
Now then we, slap on another sci-fi trope. It's like, turn him off. He's a failure.
Yeah.
Now we're going to have this robot
I was like, this is like
speak
Mega
to
Man.
Dwayne Johnson.
Yeah.
He'd go, ooh, you don't remember me, Dwayne. Oh, we have to go
was like,
to
oh,
Hobbs's past
This is
now.
about to go down.
That's when I was like, okay, I don't need to do this. I mean, this is now a new thing in movies where the ending is always going to be like
continue
we
on.
have to kind of
And there's
plant
like
the seeds.
there's like 3 or 4 damn after credit sequences, which are fine. They're none of them go over too long.
Yeah, there's 2 of them, and they're both kind of whatever to
Yeah.
me. I was a little like, I don't even remember what one of them
Well,
was.
I like the Ryan Reynolds one because, spoiler, he's in the movie. But the Ryan Reynolds one at the end, because it makes it seem like at the beginning when he shows up early that he's just a comedic foil to go back and forth. But at least that bonus sequence at the end shows that if we put this character back into play, he can also fight too. He's not just a smartass. Like he whooped
Right.
most of the people. So that's kind of why I enjoyed that scene. And I forgot, one of them was the mom Helen Mirren, the mom, getting to see both her kids come to the jail cell at the same time. Oh, and then it was The Rock getting back at Jason Statham with
Right.
the joke. But another spoiler is that came out of nowhere, was this movie did a good job of hiding stuff. I was afraid that like this movie was showing me too much in the trailers, and they managed to no, they still got stuff up their sleeve. The Ryan Reynolds thing was huge, and Kevin Hart just literally came out of nowhere.
Yeah, they hid a lot of their comedic beats and even their deeper story ideas.
Yeah.
Which was smart. Because,
Correct.
you can't just show a bunch of explosions and Idris Elba and
Right.
The Rock and Jason Statham and sell your movie. So they didn't really need to
They didn't
go
need to
too
do- yeah.
deep into it.
Put the
Because
three of them-
I think if they had shown a lot of them, the marketing too, people would have kind of
backed out, like this isn't what I
it's
want.
a kind of a big sell when you look at the Fast and the Furious movies to say that it's now a giant sci-fi thing.
Yeah.
It's tough to kind of bridge that,
Right.
you know?
It is.
And it is really, the box office when you look at it, it's fine now.
Yeah, the second weekend helped it kind of get back to
It opened to 60 million, which I say is the lowest since these movies mattered. Mm-hmm. So the only ones behind it are Tokyo Drift, Too Fast, and the first one.
Right.
Which makes a lot of sense when you just even look at
doing a new
how people look at movies.
Right.
Like, of course, it's going to make more than the Fast and the Furious because movie tickets were $1.
Correct.
Like, I could, I would have to fill up a tank of gas and buy like 3 comic books for $1 and then buy this movie ticket to pretty much equate to a large popcorn now.
Right.
Which is interesting because I think it kind of says that there's some interest to see these characters, but not a ton of interest for it.
Yeah, it's weird.
Because the last movie was the highest opening for the franchise.
Correct.
At 150 million.
But I think the true test is going to be to also see when Fast 9 comes out if Rock and Statham not being a part of it anymore affects that one's box office. Because I feel like you may have yanked some of the box office draw that series has as a whole out when you take the two of them, and then like, where does that number end up?
Well, now
Fast 9 opens up at like $45 million, and I'm like, oh, it was an issue that those were the draws, and now we're kind of just here with this.
I don't know that if they make 60 million on their opening, because if you even remove that 60 from their 147 mil of the opening, that's still about 80 million, right? It'll have been a while since Fate of the Furious.
Yeah.
And it should have just been an 8 there. So really, maybe, I don't know that it would take out more than 60 million from them.
Right.
Otherwise, I think this would have made more. But it'll be curious to see now if it's the combination of everybody, if people just like the Fast brand
more than they do a spinoff.
Or if it even is just, I mean, we just kind of talked about the history of the spinoff. It's not like any spinoff has ever beat the original franchise, right? Like, it's, again, more common in TV. You look at things like Frasier.
Did much, like went a longer run than
Happy Days.
Correct.
And all these other kind of old
Johnny
sitcoms.
Yeah. No, I think that's accurate. I mean, it's so weird though, because this movie still made a ton of money, but looking at it in comparison, and I think the biggest thing is that this movie cost $200 million to make, so it's kind of like, oh, you're getting there a little bit slower than a typical flick. But again, after this week, it was number one, and it's kind of leveled off to where all the other Fast movies have, so it'll be fine because that China number is going to be pretty large when it comes out. If this movie ends up with like around $600 million, I don't think that's a bad round for a first time film, because I think you have to treat this, while it is a spinoff and it has the Fast word on the front of it, it is still an original IP at the end of the day. Like, it's not quite Fast and the Furious.
No, it's very different.
Yeah.
Especially from the first one.
the crime drama Point Break / with cars.
It's pretty wild.
How this series has gone and changed over the last decade plus is mind-boggling. It's fun to watch. It's fun to watch actually too, as I do when the next one comes out. I watch them go along. You can actually pinpoint. This is when this series completely flipped its.
Oh, you know exactly where it might as well be its own thing,
right?
Like, it really might as well. And then it turned out that Tokyo Drift was like a seventh one in the franchise, and Jason Statham was here.
You're like, oh, Jesus.
We've done a complete 180 on that character.
Right.
He is now a hero who was misunderstood because the government made him kill his brother?
Yeah.
Nothing makes any sense. And it's fine.
And I'm in it.
And according to Vin Diesel, these should win Oscars.
No, let's ease up then.
No. This is if they want to be relevant.
Oh,
that was his argument.
Oh, if we did the entertainment Oscar,
the Oscars need to be relevant, and so they should give it to Fast and the Furious, which is, I don't know, kind of like saying if you want to list 5-star restaurants, we should include McDonald's because people go
to it a lot. Yeah,
right.
I don't think that is how that works. Quality should still trump
quantity of tickets sold.
Correct.
I think that's our show, guys. So leave us a review on iTunes and follow us on Facebook and Twitter. We're at Hollywood.com, Facebook.com/group/Hollywood Already Did It, and Hollywood ADI. I'm at, as always, Blake, and Terrence is at Terrence Tatum, and we do another show with a few other people called One More Drink about nonsense. So listen to that, and we'll see you later.
Later.